Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to the Sensation and Perception edition of 5-Minute Psych. In this 5-minute segment, we'll explore the auditory system, starting with the stimulus that we perceive, sound waves, before examining key parts of the ear. Then we'll trace the path that auditory input travels in the brain and discuss two types of hearing loss. Finally, we'll consider how the brain processes loudness and pitch. Our auditory system processes sound waves that are made up of bands of more and less condensed air particles that move through the air. These sound waves can vary in wavelength or the distance from the peak of one wave to the peak of the next wave. Variations in wavelength affect the pitch of the sound, with short wavelengths or high-frequency waves sounding high-pitched and long wavelengths or low-frequency waves sounding low-pitched. But waves can also vary in amplitude, and for a given frequency of sound, we perceive taller waves as being louder than shorter waves. As sound waves travel through the air, they hit the eardrum, causing it to get pushed in and out. Because these incoming variations in air pressure are so tiny, the ear is designed to amplify the incoming signal in many ways. First, the pinna, or the visible part of the ear on the outside, is shaped to collect the sound waves and funnel them toward the auditory canal. The auditory canal itself narrows as it moves toward the eardrum, and this shape serves to amplify the sound waves. This ensures that the eardrum receives the most amplified wave possible, causing it to vibrate at a frequency that matches the incoming sound waves. On the other side of the eardrum is the middle ear, composed of the three smallest bones in the human body, called the ossicles. The ossicles are arranged like a leverage system, with the first bone touching the backside of the eardrum, picking up that vibration, and then amplifying it across the three bones. The third bone touches the oval window of the cochlea, and on the other side of the oval window is fluid. So that third tiny bone has to hit the oval window with as much amplified force as possible to cause the fluid inside the cochlea to move. The cochlea is shaped like a snail shell, and if you imagined stretching it out and lining it with a carpet, that carpet would contain the hair cells that move as waves move through the fluid. The hair cells connect to the auditory nerve, and when they move, it causes them to send a signal onto the thalamus and then onto the primary auditory cortex in the temporal lobe. Now that we know how the ear works, we can understand two different kinds of hearing loss. With conduction hearing loss, the problem is with the amplification system. Either the ossicles aren't working or the eardrum is punctured. With this kind of hearing loss, a hearing aid works because it amplifies the sound so that the fluid inside the cochlea moves and then the person can hear. But with sensory neural hearing loss, now the hair cells themselves are damaged and are no longer able to send signals to the auditory nerve. This is usually caused by exposure to loud sounds, and treatment here isn't as easy. The only option is a cochlear implant that translates the sound waves into a signal that the brain can read, bypassing the auditory nerve entirely. People who have this say the quality of sound isn't great, but it's good enough to understand speech. The brain can interpret the loudness of the sound in three ways. First, the rate of firing of the hair cells. If they're firing fast, then the sound is louder. Also, if more of the hair cells are firing, this tells the brain that the sound was loud. And finally, the type of hair cell that fires. Some hair cells only fire if the sound waves coming in have a great amplitude. The brain has two ways of coding for variations in pitch. According to the frequency theory, for frequencies under 1000 Hertz, hair cells can fire at a rate that matches the frequency of the wave. But we can hear up to 20,000 Hertz, and we can't send impulses that fast. One option is for cells to fire according to the volley principle and fire in succession such that the combination of signals matches the incoming frequency. Alternatively, the place theory says that the incoming waves of different frequencies peak at different places along the cochlea. The brain can read where the peak of the wave is, with high-frequency waves peaking near the oval window and low-frequency waves peaking near the middle of the cochlea. Well, we explored our auditory system by starting with the stimulus that we perceive, sound waves. Then we looked at key parts of the ear before tracing the path that auditory input travels in the brain. Finally, we discussed two types of hearing loss, and we considered how the brain processes loudness and pitch. Now, aren't you glad you had 5 minutes?